In November 1984, NBC asked America to sit with a story that felt too real to be television. Fatal Vision aired on November 18th in 1984. It was adapted from Fatal Vision by Joe McGinnis. It was directed by David Green. The cast carried a quiet weight, led by Karl Malden and Eva Marie Saint. The miniseries earned major Emmy attention, with Malden taking home a win, and it left many viewers uneasy in the best way, like a lamp left on in a dark room. Fact number 10. The violence you never see. When Fatal Vision aired, it had to walk a tightrope. The real case was still raw in the public mind. Yet it was network television on a Sunday night, in living rooms where children could wander in. Director David Green chose a chilling solution. Make you feel the crime without turning it into spectacle. Reviewers later noted how Green conveys the brutality in an almost unreal, dreamlike way, while avoiding the display of actual violence. That restraint becomes part of the dread. Your imagination does the shouting. And the silence afterward lingers longer than any blood could. NBC built that atmosphere far from Fort Bragg. Production took place primarily in Southern California, with studio work in Hollywood, then relied on lighting, editing, and performance to carry the weight. It worked. The miniseries became one of the higher-rated television films of the 1984 to 1985 season. Proof that understatement can hit hardest. And once viewers had absorbed that first quiet shock, the story moved to the people who refused to let it go. Fact number 9. The costing gamble that paid off. NBC filled Fatal Vision with familiar faces, but the most delicate role went to someone many viewers did not yet widely recognize. In 1984, Gary Cole was still early in his screen career when he was cast as Jeffrey MacDonald. He was placed beside Oscar winners Karl Malden and Eva Marie Saint. He was asked to hold steady, while the story's moral weather kept shifting. That choice was not just artistic, it was practical. A widely recognized star might have arrived with a fixed image the audience could not unsee. Cole arrived without a major leading man persona, which made every glance feel newly judged. It is the kind of casting decision that disappears when it works, and becomes all you remember when it does not. In this case, it worked well enough to draw industry praise for the ensemble, even if it did not translate into major casting awards. And once those actors were in place, the next invisible hand was the editing room, shaping tension you could feel, but never quite name. Fact number 8. A miniseries that went to court before it even aired. Before America saw a single scene, Fatal Vision was already being argued like evidence. In the period leading up to the broadcast, Jeffrey MacDonald's lawyers objected, warning NBC that a dramatization on national television could prejudice his ongoing appeals. MacDonald sought to block the airing. NBC rejected the argument and stayed on schedule. That is the part many viewers never knew. This was not just a ratings event. It was a public moment colliding with an active legal fight. Even the money behind the adaptation carried attention. Contemporary reporting noted that NBC paid a six-figure sum for the television rights to Fatal Vision by Joe McGinnis. Prior publishing agreements complicated how those proceeds were distributed. So when the opening minutes began, it did not feel like fiction being introduced. It felt like a door being opened, and everyone was already standing in the hallway. And next, inside that door, the story leaned on one unforgettable performance. Fact number 7. A reunion from the docks, now in a courtroom. There is a quiet piece of old Hollywood history inside Fatal Vision. Karl Malden and Eva Marie Saint had both appeared decades earlier in On the Waterfront, a film many viewers carried in their bones, though they did not share scenes together. In 1984, they appeared again in the same production. Not on a pier, but in a story filled with depositions, phone calls, and sleepless doubt. Saint plays Mildred Kassab, the wife of Malden's Freddie Kassab, the father-in-law who cannot stop asking questions. That casting does something almost unfair to the heart. Malden's Freddie is written as a retiree who spends years chasing what he believes is the truth. Malden plays him with the weary steadiness of a man who has already cried in private. The industry noticed the weight he carried. Malden won the Primetime Emmy for Outstanding Supporting Actor in a limited series or special for this role. And once you feel that older couple holding each other upright, you start to notice the smaller choices around them. The writing, the directing, the pacing that kept this from becoming just another true crime headline. Fact number 6. The director who could not stop crying. David Green had already built a reputation for serious television when he directed Fatal Vision. Contemporary coverage noted the emotional weight of the material and the care required to bring it to network television. That attention shows in the pacing, in the pauses that let a room go still, in the sense that the camera is listening instead of prowling. The industry recognized the production's craft. John Gay received a Primetime Emmy nomination for Outstanding Writing in a Limited Series or Special. The miniseries earned additional nominations, including for acting. It is a behind-the-scenes detail that changes the way you watch. The tone was not accidental. It was a deliberate creative decision, shaped in the earliest stages of adaptation. And next comes a craft choice you almost never think about. The way this miniseries used real-seeming places to make California stand in for an entire moral battlefield. Fact number 5. The sound that felt like a cold fluorescent light. If Fatal Vision still feels unsettling decades later, part of it comes from the music. NBC hired Gil Mellé to score the miniseries, and his name sits in the opening credits like a quiet warning. Mellé blended jazz instincts with early electronic experimentation. He was known for using self-built electronic instruments, either alone or woven into an orchestra. That background mattered here. This story needed tension without theatrics. The kind of unease that sits under a conversation. Like a humming light you cannot switch off. Mellé's electronics were rarely shiny or futuristic. They could feel clinical, lonely, slightly wrong, which matches the drama's emotional temperature. It is the sort of behind-the-scenes choice many viewers never name. Yet it steers every scene toward doubt. And once you feel that sound in your bones, you start watching the visuals more closely. Fact number 4. The miniseries that sparked a journalism reckoning. Fatal Vision did something unusual for network television. It carried a second story inside the first. Not on screen, but behind the scenes, in the way the book came to be. Joe McGinnis spent years close to Jeffrey MacDonald while writing Fatal Vision. After publication, MacDonald sued him in 1984, claiming fraud and breach of contract. The case went to trial in 1987. Although a jury initially returned a verdict in MacDonald's favor, the judge later set that verdict aside. The dispute ultimately ended in an out-of-court settlement in November 1987. That lawsuit did not stay in the courthouse. It became a cultural argument about what a writer owes the person he is writing about. In 1989, Janet Malcolm's series in The New Yorker, The Journalist and the Murderer, used the McGinnis-MacDonald conflict as its central case. She later expanded it into the book The Journalist and the Murderer, turning the Fatal Vision saga into a cautionary tale for an entire profession. So, when you watch the miniseries, you are not only watching actors and camera angles, you are watching a moment when true crime, television, and public trust all began to tangle together. And next comes a quieter craft secret. How the production team chose places and textures that made a California shoot feel like a very specific American world. Fact number 3. California standing in for Fort Bragg. One of the strangest little secrets of Fatal Vision is how far its reality had to travel. The story is rooted in North Carolina and in the military world around Fort Bragg, but the cameras largely rolled in Los Angeles, with additional studio production in Hollywood. That choice is not just a budget footnote. It affects the feeling of the drama. California light behaves differently, even when you try to hide it. A careful director turns familiar suburban streets into something slightly unsteady, as if the world looks normal, but does not feel safe. The brightness becomes part of the unease. It adds to the sense that the ground under the story is always shifting. It is also a reminder of how television was made in that era. Network miniseries had to move fast, build convincing worlds quickly, and still look dignified enough to earn trust. Fatal Vision did earn industry recognition, receiving Primetime Emmy nominations, including for writing and acting. And once you realize how much was built, shaped, and staged, you start paying attention to what else the miniseries chose not to show, especially in the way it handled time. Fact number 2. The small name in the credits with a hard afterlife. If you pause the cast list of Fatal Vision, you will see 2 different girls credited as Kimberly MacDonald. One is Brandy Gold at age 5. The other is Judith Barcy at age 3. It is a tiny detail, almost invisible in the flow of the drama, yet it carries a weight no one in 1984 could have imagined. Barcy was only beginning. Her screen career unfolded in the mid-1980s, and this miniseries sits near the start of her brief time on screen, before later voice roles made her widely loved. Then the real world broke in. In July 1988, the 10-year-old actress and her mother were shot and killed by her father, who then died by suicide. Authorities ruled it a murder-suicide. It is a reminder that a production is not only a story, it is a moment in people's lives, captured forever, even when the future turns cruel. And that leads to the biggest question Fatal Vision leaves hanging, the one it could never fully close. Fact number 1. The editors who built the trapdoor. Fatal Vision aired in 2 episodes on NBC across November 18th and November 19th, 1984, with a combined runtime of roughly 3 hours, including broadcast formatting. That tight shape meant the editing had to do more than keep the story moving. It had to control what you believed, minute by minute, then take it away again. Each cut had to feel like a courtroom pause, the kind where you suddenly hear your own breathing. The work was widely noted for its control and restraint, even if it did not translate into major editing awards. It is a behind-the-scenes craft choice that explains why the miniseries still plays like a remembered nightmare. The story does not simply end, it slips out from under you. You finish the second night with the sense that something important has been decided, and yet the room feels unfinished, like a chair pushed back but never set right again. And once the final image fades, you realize the series has done what the best true crime television quietly does. It leaves you alone with the weight of it. Some television disappears the moment the camera stops rolling. Fatal Vision does not. It lingers, like a photograph you cannot quite return to its drawer. 2 nights in 1984, a story moved through the screen with steady hands and careful pacing, asking viewers to sit with uncertainty. Even decades later, the memory of it remains hushed, heavy, and unmistakably human.